Most people spent the 1940s trying to escape the Nazi death machine. Witold Pilecki spent his time trying to break into it. While millions were being herded toward the gates of Auschwitz in terror, this man walked toward them voluntarily, carrying a false identity and a mission that sounds like the fever dream of a Hollywood screenwriter. He wasn't a spy from a foreign power, or a man with nothing to lose. He was a father, a husband, and a soldier who believed that some things are more important than survival.
Witold Pilecki was born in 1901 in the northern reaches of the Russian Empire, in a town called Olonets. His family had been forcibly resettled there by the Tsarist regime as punishment for participating in Polish uprisings. From the very beginning, his life was defined by the struggle for a country that didn't even exist on the map at the time. He grew up in a household where Polish culture and history were spoken of in whispers, a forbidden fire kept alive in the freezing Russian winters. By the time he was a young man, the world was fracturing. The First World War gave way to the Russian Revolution, and in the chaos, Poland finally clawed back its independence. Pilecki was right there in the thick of it. In 1920, during the Polish-Soviet War, he fought as a cavalryman, defending Warsaw against the Bolshevik advance. He was twice awarded the Cross of Valor. He was a natural soldier, but when the guns fell silent, he didn't seek a life of military glory. He wanted the peace he had spent his youth fighting for. He settled down in the eastern borderlands of Poland in a small estate called Sukurcze. He became a farmer. He got married to a local school teacher named Maria. They had 2 children. For nearly 20 years, Witold Pilecki lived the life of a quiet country gentleman. He painted, he managed the farm, and he became a pillar of his community. If you had seen him then, walking through his orchards or playing with his children, you would never have guessed that this was a man capable of staring down the ultimate personification of evil. But the peace of the 1930s was an illusion. On September 1st, 1939, the Nazi blitzkrieg tore into Poland from the west. 2 weeks later, the Soviet Union invaded from the east. Poland was crushed between 2 of the most brutal regimes in human history. Pilecki was called up as a cavalry commander, and he fought with desperate bravery. He and his men were among the last to lay down their arms. But for Pilecki, the surrender of the army wasn't the end of the war. It was just the beginning of a different kind of fight. He slipped into the shadows of occupied Warsaw and helped co-found the secret Polish army, one of the first underground resistance organizations. In those early days of the occupation, rumors began to circulate about a massive new prison camp the Germans had established near the town of Auschwitz, known to the world now by its German name, Auschwitz. No one knew exactly what was happening behind those barbed wire fences. Was it a transit camp, a traditional prison, or something far more sinister? The Polish resistance needed intelligence. They needed someone to go inside, organize a cell of resistance, and report back. It was a suicide mission. Pilecki didn't wait for someone else to volunteer. He stepped forward. He obtained a set of false identity papers in the name of Tomasz Serafiński. On September 19, 1940, during a massive German street roundup in Warsaw, Pilecki deliberately walked into the path of the SS. He was beaten, thrown into a truck, and 2 days later, he passed under the gate that read, Arbeit macht frei. The reality of Auschwitz hit him the moment he stepped off the train. He saw guards clubbing men to death for no reason. He saw the systematic stripping of human dignity. He was no longer Witold Pilecki. He was prisoner number 4859. But while most men were paralyzed by the sheer horror of the place, Pilecki's mind was already working. He began to look for men he could trust. Within the camp, he founded the ZOE, the Union of Military Organizations. His goal was to boost morale, provide extra food and clothing to members, and most importantly, prepare for an armed uprising should the Polish underground or the Allies ever attempt a rescue mission. He built his network in small cells of 5, so that if one man was tortured, he could only betray 4 others. It was a masterpiece of intelligence work conducted in the middle of a slaughterhouse. Through a series of incredibly risky maneuvers, Pilecki began sending reports out of the camp.
He used a hidden radio transmitter built by prisoners from smuggled parts. He sent couriers who managed to escape. His reports, known as Witold's reports, were the first pieces of evidence the Western Allies received about the horrors of Auschwitz. He described the gas chambers, the medical experiments, and the industrial-scale murder. At first, his superiors in the resistance and the leaders in London found his reports hard to believe. They thought he was exaggerating. They couldn't conceive that such a factory of death could exist.
Pilecki stayed in Auschwitz for nearly 2.5 years. During that time, he survived bouts of typhus, pneumonia, and the constant threat of execution. He watched his friends be dragged to the Black Wall to be shot. He saw the camp transform from a brutal prison for political dissidents into the epicenter of the Holocaust. By 1943, he realized that no outside help was coming. The Allies weren't going to bomb the tracks or storm the gates. He decided that his mission was over and that he was more useful to the cause outside the camp than inside.
His escape was as daring as his entry. On the night of April 26, 1943, while working a night shift in the camp's bakery outside the main fence, he and 2 other prisoners overpowered a guard, cut the phone lines, and bolted into the darkness. They were shot at, they were hunted by dogs, and they had to navigate miles of enemy territory while wearing striped prison uniforms. But against all odds, Pilecki made it back to the Polish underground. You might think that after surviving 2.5 years in hell, Pilecki would have felt he had done enough, but his sense of duty was absolute. He immediately pushed for an attack on Auschwitz to free the prisoners. When the Polish Home Army Command rejected the plan as a military impossibility, he returned to the underground struggle in Warsaw.
In August 1944, the Warsaw Uprising broke out. For 63 days, the Polish resistance fought the German army street by street, house by house. Pilecki fought with the ferocity of a man who knew exactly what the enemy was capable of. He initially fought as a common soldier, hiding his rank, but eventually took command of a fortified area known as the Great Bastion. It was one of the few Polish positions that never fell to the Germans during the entire uprising. When the city finally fell, Pilecki was taken as a prisoner of war and sent to a camp in Germany.
When the war finally ended in 1945, the nightmare should have been over. The Nazis were defeated and Pilecki was liberated, but a new shadow was falling over Poland. The Soviet Union, which had once been Hitler's partner in carving up the country, was now the new occupier. A pro-Soviet communist government was installed in Warsaw, and the men and women of the Polish resistance, the very people who had fought the Nazis for 6 years, were now seen as enemies of the state. Pilecki remained loyal to the Polish government in exile in London. He was sent back to Poland on a secret mission to gather intelligence on the Soviet takeover and the brutal tactics of the new secret police, the UB. He knew the risks. His friends begged him to flee back to the West as the communist net tightened around him, but Pilecki refused. He said he couldn't leave when there was still work to be done. In May 1947, he was arrested by the UB. What followed was a period of torture so severe that Pilecki later whispered to his wife during a brief meeting that Auschwitz was just a game compared to what the communists were doing to him. They broke his bones, they tore out his fingernails, and they kept him in total isolation. They wanted him to sign a confession admitting to being a foreign spy and a murderer. In March 1948, a show trial was held. The man who had volunteered for Auschwitz, the man who had warned the world about the Holocaust, was branded a traitor to his country. The trial was a farce. The verdict was predetermined. Witold Pilecki was sentenced to death. On May 25, 1948, in the Mokotów prison in Warsaw, he was led to a basement room. He was 47 years old. He was shot in the back of the head, a signature execution style of the Soviet secret police. His body was thrown into a nameless pit in a hidden corner of a local cemetery, his location kept a secret for decades.
The communist regime didn't just want to kill Witold Pilecki, they wanted to erase him. For 40 years, his name was banned from history books. Mentioning his exploits could get you arrested. His children grew up not knowing the full extent of their father's heroism. To the state, he was a non-person, a ghost they hoped the world would forget.
But truth has a way of outlasting tyrants. When the Iron Curtain finally fell in 1989, the story of the man who volunteered for Auschwitz began to emerge from the archives. Today, Witold Pilecki is recognized as one of the greatest heroes of the 20th century. He was a man who didn't just fight for a flag or a piece of land, but for the very idea of human dignity in an age that had forgotten it. He could have stayed on his farm, he could have stayed in hiding, he could have stayed in the West after the war, but at every crossroad, Witold Pilecki chose the path of most resistance. He walked into the heart of darkness not because he was fearless, but because he believed that the truth was worth any price. His legacy isn't just a story of military bravery. It's a reminder that even in the most hopeless places on earth, a single person can choose to remain human. He was a man who went to hell and back, only to be killed by the country he had spent his entire life trying to save. Subscribe for more stories of forgotten history.